Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Capricorn, Sun, Moon and Ascendant for the month of November. I hope you're well. Using the Crow Tarot today. Oh, that's the one that jumped out. Do I have things to tell you? Not really. Mercury goes direct today, but remember that there's a shadow period of about 2 weeks that will take us up to mid-November, and the retrograde in Mars will be coming to an end on the 14th. I think actually Mercury comes out of shadow around about the same time. Yeah, around about the same time. So if you've been suffering with the retrograde energy a little bit, and I've got a feeling that I read somewhere that there were some cosmological happenings that were affecting cardinal signs a little bit more than everybody else. I hope that it's not too awful for you. Let's have a look anyway and see what's going on with Capricorn at the moment. Can I have 3 cards for Capricorn, please? There's the first. We've got the 7 of Cups in your recent past. Current energy for Capricorn. Your current energy is 8 of Pentacles and the Chariot. Nice. Chariot is a card of Cancer. Oh, card that's flipped around there. Let's put it back in. And what is coming towards Capricorn, please? What do we have here? There's a card. I can't quite see it. Oh, we have 2 cards. Now the Moon and the Page of Cups. That's interesting. The Moon is also a card of Cancer. So some pretty watery energy over you at the moment. We've got the Star at the bottom of the deck. That's the card of Aquarius. And it speaks to me about connection, actually, more than anything else. It's sometimes called the Wish card, and it sometimes, denotes hope for the future, and those things are quite possible. It also talks about healing. But for me, specifically me, it talks about the power of connection, right? Something that's probably quite on everybody's mind at the moment, actually, I should think, with the prospect of another imminent lockdown in the UK. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but I think we're all a bit tired of it, feeling disconnected. Anyway, let's get some clarifiers and see what this is all about for you. 7 of Cups, why is that here? We've got the Page of Swords, I like that. And why is the Page, why is the 7 of Cups here? Well, we have the Moon again. Interesting. Well, it's twice now it's appeared. Oh good lord. Shut this window. There's an enormous haulage lorry outside my house. Oh. Why is the 8 of Pentacles in the Chariot here, please? We have the Empress. And we have the 7 of Wands. Now, given that we had 2 cards come out there, do you want to... No, I won't do it just yet. I'm probably going to pull some more clarifiers for that. Why is the Moon and the Page of Cups here? We have the 8 of Cups. Fitting. And the Ace of Wands, delightful. I love this. Right. Do you know what, Capricorn? It's really interesting. Aside from the 8 of Pentacles here, you have no Pentacles cards on the tables at all. It seems to me like November, and potentially for part of October as well, your mind has been on other things, and specifically it seems to be mostly emotional things, which is good, because like I said, we have been in Mercury retrograde, and although that is coming to an end, we've been in that energy for a while now, and we're still in the shadow period, so it's something to bear in mind. But in Scorpio, it is about digging deep and pulling those things that are hidden from us out into the sunlight so that we can see them. In doing so, they lose their power to affect us, and I think that this is probably going to be a bit of a theme for you across this reading, but let's see where we go with it anyway. So in your recent past, you've got the 7 of Cups. And this is interesting because it can talk about having lots of choices. It can talk about there being a level of not knowing really what you want from something, but I'm not really getting either of those interpretations here for you. It feels like not quite illusion, but a baffling array of emotional requirements from you, all right, toward yourself, but also required of you from other people. And this is something that you've kind of steered away from in your life because it's not something that you've readily understood, right? Not so much as, you know, you're cold and you don't understand emotion or anything like that, but like, I mentioned this before. Did I mention it to you? I might have mentioned it to a different sign. But I saw a tweet on Twitter a month or so ago, and it said, in astrology, we don't say we have childhood trauma, we say we have Capricorn placements, right? I'm a Capricorn ascendant, and I cackled because I thought it was pretty spot on, right? This is something that has always bothered you because your feelings are not something that you have ever really felt were that valid. You know, when you found that you have feelings about things, you tend to shut them down. And when other people have presented feelings at you, it's kind of sent you running. It makes you flustered and you just need to get away from it as quickly as possible because what you like is things that are simple and straightforward, you know? And I've spoken before about how, might have even just been in the last reading, how Capricorn seems to be waking up from this state, kind of realizing that they've ploughed every single bit of energy that they've had into work, into achieving, high achieving, you know, whether that's work or something else, right? Hobbies, whatever, sports potentially. And they've done so because the validation that comes from that seemed like it was more worthy, like it meant something, right? This is where you derive your own personal sense of value. Has been from status, has been from being seen as a high achiever, from accomplishing many things, right? But somewhere along the way in 2020, this is kind of, I've got imagery of just like, I don't know, like a fucking wheelbarrow or something just being tipped over. And all of those things that you have accomplished, all of those material possessions, because security is very important to you as an earth sign, all of those things that you managed to surround yourself with to make yourself feel better have felt a little less significant than they did before, and there's been a sense of slight discombobulation from you about it because you're like, well, shit, hang on, my entire life has revolved around this and now it doesn't quite mean as much as it used to. What do I do now, you know? And bit by bit what has been occurring is you've been digging about a little bit, slowly at first, very tentatively, but just sort of pouring the ground with your goat hooves and just going, what is under here, just out of interest? Because for many of you, you have been so separated from the notion of emotional validity that you don't even know what that looks like now, right? For some of you, you may not even remember what it was that made you feel the way that you did about emotions and what they involved. It's kind of bafflement that everybody else seems to do it better than you do, and you don't know why. Like I said, for some of you, it's because you don't even remember it, right? Which is to say, you don't really remember the catalyzing event that set you off down this path, right? Now, the two cards that we've got to clarify here are the Page of Swords. Noisy lorry. The Page of Swords and the Moon. And this is interesting, not least because the moon appears twice in your spread here, but it's in your recent past. Now, the Page of Swords to me, you can sometimes talk about a message, but like I don't really for me, that doesn't really hold any weight as an interpretation. For me, it seems more likely that what we've got here is a quiet, studious energy of somebody who is learning to think differently to the way that they have done before, right? There's been a shifting of priorities with you. We've discussed that at length before, but there's been a rejigging of the internal space for you. And I feel like it's starting to throw up things now that you have not even been aware existed. You know, the moon is the things that are hidden, right? It's the it can be secrets, it can be deception, it can be all of those things. But for me, I prefer the interpretation of seeing it as just those things about you that are hidden, those things that you didn't even know were there. We're talking about the shadow, we're talking about the non-conscious, the subconscious, or that kind of thing. And we see you here now starting to adapt the way that you think about these things, right? Perhaps there's been a bit of looking in the mirror and being like, who am I? Really? You know? Yes, I am this job title. Yes, I have these things. I've got my personal security. But really, at the root of it, who am I? On a fundamental level. Those people who are connected to me, how do they see me? What do they see when they look at me? Do they see a high achiever, or do they see the human behind it? And where you were quite happy to define yourself in the past by the projection of you that you put out there, it seems like it's losing its meaning now. Quite strongly. So then we move into your current energy, and what we've got is the Eight of Pentacles and the Chariot. Now, the Eight of Pentacles is the card of work, right? Specifically, it's the card of working at something until you achieve mastery, and it's not a card I'm at all surprised to see in a Capricorn reading, right? Quite often, this does refer to the physical act of going to work, earning your money, you know, being... having that tremendous work ethic that Capricorns are known for, right? Keep ploughing away at something until the job is done. Between you and Taurus, not so much Virgo, I have to say, but you and Taurus, right? Steadfast, won't shift until the job's done. But the interesting thing is it's come up with the Chariot. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that I associate the Chariot very, very strongly with the notion of shadow work, right? Because the Chariot talks about duality, it talks about polarities. We've got a chariot, we've got two beasts in front of it, and the charioteer has to make the chariot go in a straight line. And in order to do that, he has to control these two beasts, and they are black and white sphinxes, generally, if you're using the Rider-Waite. It's depicted differently in other cards, but black, white, negative, positive, as in polarities, not as in, you know, good and bad stuff, but sometimes good and bad stuff. The masculine and the feminine, like the two parts that everything seems to fall into. Yeah? And we're nowhere near a unity consciousness yet. We're still very much in a, you know, duality consciousness. So these two things have to be held in alignment in order that this charioteer can go in a straight line. And more often than not, the charioteer is not depicted with any reins, right? This is with the power of his mind alone that he is controlling these beasts. So to that end, then the chariot becomes that point, the charioteer becomes that point of integration between the two beasts, right? The balance between the two. And he can make those little micro adjustments as necessary to make sure that he goes in a straight line. And that seems like a metaphor for shadow work to me. Particularly when on this chariot card, we've got the moon up there in the background. Now, the other thing that we've got is a laurel wreath, right? A symbol that is associated with victory. So what we have here is you working on the shadow. Now, whether or not you know that that's what it's called, you know, and charioteers, tarot readers will refer to the shadow. Psychologists will refer to the shadow. But in pretty much any modality you can think of, there is this notion of things that are hidden from us, you know. in shamanism, it's soul retrieval, right? And bits of your soul get splintered off, and you have to go back and you find them, retrieve them, and integrate them into you. This is where you're at the moment. Now, this is brilliant because this is where you've been headed all year, actually. And true to Capricorn energy, you've not charged in, you know, really fast, like say Aries would, you know, just like... You've taken it slowly and steadily, checking yourself, making sure that you're happy with where you're at before you go any deeper. Right? You don't like being out of your depth with anything. There are some signs that are quite happy to be thrown in, you know, be neck deep and work out what they're doing while they're there. You don't like that. You like to take things steady. And this is what you've been doing. Right? So now we are at a point now where your shadow, the things that are hidden, I'm feeling a sense of curiosity from you more than anything else, actually. Like, because this is a voyage of discovery. When you start on any kind of shadow work, like, it is a voyage of self-discovery. You start to understand things about yourself that you never truly understood before. And it seems to add a depth to your life that you may have, well, you may well have found was missing at points. You know, we just kind of assumed that that's what life was about, but it's not. Right? There are layers to everything, and it's like you're uncovering layers above you and below you and around you, you know, land to be explored. And you're doing it very successfully at the moment. Like, this approach is working very, very well for you, Capricorn. Now, the two cards that we've got underneath here are the Empress, which is Taurus energy, you know, so your sister Earth sign, and the Seven of Wands. Now, this is interesting because for some of you, this is something that's come up repeatedly over the course of this year in the Capricorn readings, and this is the notion of your shadow having had its source, its creation in your relationship with your mother, right? I can't ignore that. It comes up repeatedly. And if that is true, you know, there's something there to be explored. It's come out with the Seven of Wands. Now it's quite guarded, defensive energy, right? Are you guarded and defensive? Potentially. Where did you learn it? Possibly from your mother, right? Just saying. But there is another way to look at the Seven of Wands, and that is a protective energy, because what we've got here is a woman with a child behind her, right? So it could be that where you're getting with your shadow work now, which is somewhere like quite deep, is looking at the fact that ultimately you have to accept that she only ever really tried to do her best. But in some ways, she quite possibly fucked it up. Like, I mean, anybody out there who's a mother knows how easy that is to do. You know, you snap at your child when you don't mean to, but you're stressed about something else, and you see their little faces crumple, and you're just like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, like, it happens all the time. Okay? And even with the clearest, best intentions in the world, there are going to be times where you do things that affect your children in a negative way. Just say. What makes that kind of difficult to navigate then is kind of where you go there from it, because we're kind of conditioned as a society to, and I genuinely do feel like this, there's a hefty blame culture that permeates, you know, how we live. You know, we take people to court to, you know, slap punitive fines on them. Not people, companies, you know, because that is how they repay their culpability. You know, we blame something outside of ourselves, and sometimes that's perfectly reasonable to do, right? If somebody's fucked up, it's right that they in some way try and restore you to where you were before they did that. But we do it on a very basic day-to-day level, right? So people do things and we're just like filled with righteous indignation about these things quite often, you know. But at this point, it's really important to remember that we judge ourselves by our intentions, but we judge others by their behavior, right? So where we do things and we fuck up, we tend to give ourselves a little bit of an easier ride, because we know that we weren't actually going out to do something awful, right? It just fucking happened. It was a thing, right? And this can, you know, right the way across the board. If we, for a second, detach and look at how our behaviours come across with none of our good intentions kind of inputted in there, it can be quite startling to see how we might come across to others, right? Equally, if we look at other people's intentions rather than what they actually did, sometimes we can't criticize them because we understand that these things happen. And I kind of feel like this is where you're at with it. You know, for many, many years you refused to look at it all together. And then where you kind of felt like you could blame, having sat with it for a while, you now see that it's not really appropriate to blame. It just isn't, you know? I'm going to pull another card for that, because this seems very mother-centric, and I don't imagine, well, maybe astrology would tell us that it is all down to your mothers, but it's not going to be true for everyone. For some of you, it's your father. Can't believe this. Look, there are your parents. These are the archetypal parents. The mother with the Empress and the Emperor with the father, obviously. Right, okay. With everything that I've just said, still holds true, you know? Where you find it difficult to process emotion, is that because your father was cold and distant, right? Because he had to go out to work and he had lots of concerns about providing for his family, and he couldn't spare the spoons to be, you know, emotionally available on top of all of the hard work that he did. Maybe that's the way of looking at it. Like, I see you pulling apart your family dynamic and examining it. And the important thing is that you are in the right place to do it now. You are in the right frame of mind to do it now, because you don't feel, to me, like you are going at it with the intention of finding someone to blame. It's understanding is what you're looking for. This is what it's at the root of it here, you know. And maybe some of you are parents now. Maybe some of you feel some of that coming from, you know, or maybe you're completely opposite as parents. But the more you are opposite as a parent, the more you understand how damaging it was for you when you were a kid. And now you're looking at your parents and going like, how the fuck did they do it like that? Like, what? Yeah? This is all really good, healthy stuff. And it's all happening in exactly the right frame of mind. Like I've already said that, but it's like you're at a state of okayness where you can look at these things with a slightly detached point of reference, right? And not slide into the pain and the hurt of being a child, right? There's a maturation of your energy having gone on here, right? And you look at it and you go, well, this is not how I would parent my kids. It's just not what I would do. Why did mine do it like that? You know, and now as an adult with worldly concerns, you know, like earning the money and putting the food on the table and getting your bills paid and your fucking 2-hour commute to work, all that sort of thing, like all of these things now, you have a point of reference that is better than when you were a child, and you are understanding things. And maybe where you had blamed your parents in the past, maybe where you had just decided that they just weren't there for you in one way or another, you kind of see that they maybe were doing the best that they could, right? Now this is important because what is coming towards you, I'll seg beautifully into it. What's coming towards you in November is the Moon and the Page of Cups, and this is glorious. This is really, really glorious, because we've already, you know, I'm going to come back to this particular depiction of the moon. We've already discussed it, but there is something slightly different about this that I like. We go straight to the Page of Cups. This is it's quite Piscean energy to me, actually. It doesn't have a strict correspondence, astrologically speaking, but I think there's something inherently Piscean about just how whimsical and slightly weird the Page of Cups is. And I say that with love because I love Pisces, right? But they are space cadets. We know that. They know that. Like, it's fine. But we've got that Ace of Cups there, and we have a small person, right? And this might be your child, right? If you've got a Piscean child or a water sign child, it could be that this is the lesson that they are teaching you. But if not, it doesn't really matter, because the energetic lesson is the same, right? This is associated with forgiveness and compassion, right? It can sometimes be a message, and if it is, it would be small messages of love. And in that way, I read that as an apology, right? It could be that you have an apology coming in, but I don't think so, right? I think this is you seeing things clearly now. And I think forgiveness of your parents is possibly a thing that's going on here. But additionally, I think there may be forgiveness of yourself involved too, right? Because it's come out with the moon, which is about your internal space. It's about, you know, what's going on underneath. The thing that I like about this depiction of the moon rather than this one, look at those. Two very different depictions, but they're the same, right? Except slightly different, right? Nuanced differences between the two. This is you looking in the mirror at you and trying to work out if you like what you see, trying to work out if you even understand what it is that you see there. Like, who are you? This is slightly different because what we've got there is a projection onto the moon, right? And that's an important word there, because when we're talking about shadow stuff, like, one of the things that happens with that is that we project it onto other people. So the things that we find distasteful in other people and we really recoil from, it's quite often because we recoil from that in ourselves, right? Where you have a really strong instant dislike to something, it's because it's touching something in you. And it could be that you hold those particular, you know, characteristics in you and you find them disagreeable, so you've pushed them to the side, and yet here there is somebody who, you know, wasn't strong enough to do the same, and they're just parading it around, and who are they, right? Or it could be pointing to a lack of that in you, you know, where you've got somebody, you know, with a really strong shadow component to them, who sees someone who is just joyful, it's just happy. And the shadowy person will immediately dismiss them as shallow, you know, simple, not quite understanding how the world works, stuff like that. But we are also in receipt of the projection of others, right? And I think that what you're understanding is how all of this stuff now comes together. Because nobody goes out of the way. Well, few people. There's probably some notable exceptions. Very few people go out of their way to genuinely just be a bastard. And particularly not to their own kids. It's something that happens kind of incidentally, right? I think that you see how your own shadow has been formed by the projections of your parents' shadows, right? So you're looking at them and you're kind of considering their upbringing, what you know of it, and how they are with you, you know, what you knew of your grandparents and stuff like that. And you can kind of see the shadow at work in them now, in your parents. You can see what they were struggling with. You can see what they were suffering with. And you see how it necessarily, because they didn't deal with it, projected it forwards onto you. I see great release coming from this because you see it, you understand it, you understand how it relates to you, and you are releasing it. Because the very first clarifier there is the Eight of Cups. You have so many emotions associated with things that in some ways you topped out as a kid, right? You stopped at a certain level and you were like fuck off, and like kick that into the long grass. That doesn't do me any good. Achieving gets me, you know, what I need. So I'm just gonna do that, right? But those emotions didn't go away, right? All those cups that you filled with emotions as a kid, like they haven't gone anywhere. They've just been sat in the dark waiting for you to discover them. You've been finding them here now, right? And one by one, you can look in those cups and go, okay, well, you know, 6-year-old me, this is what happened then, and that's why I felt like this, and that's the thing. I'll put that cup there. 7-year-old me, 8-year-old me, 9, 10, 11, right through your teens, yeah? You see all of those cups now, and you see all of the emotion that has been associated with these events from being a kid. And looking at it from, I don't want to say sad, because it doesn't really feel like it's sad exactly. It feels more like just sort of, what is it that I'm feeling? I just keep wanting to sigh. Like it is a bit sad. But you're detaching from it in the right way now, right? Before you detached from it and hid it because you didn't know how to deal with it. This time you're detaching from it because you see it, you understand it, you get it. And you see that it's pointless to hold on to it any longer. And you're going to leave it behind. Like, this is indicating to me a bit of a leap, right, in your emotional understanding, not just of you, but also of other people. Now, if you are in a relationship, this is going to start really opening that up in some way, right? Because where you've been closed down, you are going to start opening up. You're going to start being more intimate, more vulnerable, allowing yourself to kind of discover who you are and let others discover who you are too, right? Because you kind of dealt with all the problematic stuff and you're moving away from it. And where is this bloke going? He's going to find his 9th cup, and that is the wish fulfillment, right? More than that, it's about happiness and your ability to make you happy, right? Taking responsibility for your own personal happiness, your own emotional fulfillment, where you filled that gap with work and achievement and hobbies and overachievement in some ways. It's almost like a stepping down of the, and I've mentioned this to you before, it's like you're taking your foot off the pedal just a little bit now, right? You don't need to just get your goat head down and just straight forwards in a straight line till you hit your goal at the end of your 5-year plan. You're taking a little bit of time to smell the roses and kind of look around at the scenery and stuff like that. You know, there's a I'm trying to find the right phrase for it. There's something about you that's kind of savouring the moment a little bit more now, Capricorn. And your relationships, intimate and romantic or otherwise, can only benefit as a result. Right? Because what we've got is the ignition of something new in you here, a new passion. And I think that this new passion, you know, it's tied up quite nicely with your work ethic, because I feel like what has been specifically and only your work ethic so far through your life is actually going to start expanding into something else. It's expanding into encapsulating emotional fulfillment, not just of you but of other people as well. Where you have been withdrawn, where you have been reserved, where you have not engaged, you're going to start doing that now, right? It's something new is waking up in you, and it's something that's much more balanced than where you've been in the years, possibly decades up until this point. And this is fantastic. You know, I love the fact that one of the really truly glorious things about 2020, aside from, well, you know, in most respects it's an utter shit show, but on a personal level, on an individual level, the amount of growth that is happening to the collective, well, to the individual specifically, but then wider for the collective, has been exponential. Like, we've leapt decades in a matter of a few months, and you are at a point where you can enjoy things in a way that you've never done before, moving forwards. And yes, there may be hard times ahead, but what it will really do is underline to you what is important. It will make you savor those moments that are good coming forwards, right? Oh, I love this for you, Capricorn. This is wonderful. And as a Capricorn ascendant, man, I fucking claim this reading. Full on. So, if this has resonated with you, I am going to do an extended. I'll go over to Vimeo now and do that. There'll be a link down in the description box. Just have a look down there. It'll be like the first thing there. If you want to come and join me, that would be wonderful. If not, not a problem at all. I'm just happy that you stayed with me this long. So, you take care and know that I love you all. And I'll see you very soon.